everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about the figure-ground relationship and what you need to know in Illustrator to set up your files for this assignment. So please look over all of the readings that I have set up on Blackboard so you understand about figure-ground relationship. But basically, there are three types of figure-ground relationships. So first of all, what's figure-ground relationship? It's basically the figure, which could literally be a figure, or it could be a shape, or a letter, or a logo, and how it relates to the space around it, its background. So there are three types of figure ground relationships. The first one being stable. So that's when we see our figure or our shape, and it's really independent from what's happening in the background. There's no particular connection between the two. I just look at this and I see the figure. And that's like, for example, probably what you've done in photography. Like if you're taking a picture of someone, you want that person to stand out, not to have to conflict with the background. I'll show you what I mean. For example, here's an example of like bad photography where the figure and the ground are connected in a way that they shouldn't be. You see what I mean? It looks like this pole is coming out of her head. So that's the kind of figure ground relationship that you don't want to have in photography. You want to have a stable figure ground relationship so that she stands out. Or here's another example, and this one's kind of on the funny side. I think they did it on purpose. But if you didn't want to have that on purpose, then the figure ground relationship you'd want to have is that this is stable, so they're not connected in any way. So most of the time when you have your shape, for this example, it's going to be letters, and it's standing by itself and we can see it in its entirety, that background is going to be considered stable. But sometimes when you move things off to the edges and we can't really see what the original shape was, this can create what's called a reversible figure ground relationship. So in other words, at moments, our eyes look here and we see this, the black part, as being the shape. And then at other moments, our eyes kind of switch focus and we look at this and this looks like it's the shape. So when the background and the foreground both kind of take turns going back and forth of being the shape, that's what's considered reversible. Ambiguous is when they're both the foreground and the background, so the figure and the ground are both considered to have a dominant shape at the same time. So in this one, it's not so much that it goes back and forth between the black being the figure and then the white being the figure. It's happening at the same time. It's really ambiguous to know which one is kind of on top and which one's in the background. Okay, so I'm just going to move over here to show you some past student examples. And I'm working in edit mode, so that's why my Blackboard looks a little bit different from yours. So what you're going to do for this assignment is you're setting up here. I'm going to go how to set this up in Illustrator. I'll go over that in a second. But you're going to create all of these small boxes like you've been doing for all your practices. And again, that's just because I want you to treat each one of these boxes like it's its own page. A figure ground relationship doesn't exist if it doesn't have something to contain it. So that's what we're looking at. But also in this practice, you're going to be looking at different font families. So what I want you to do is for each one of these, you're going to take a single letter and you're going to explore. I'll show you how to do this in Illustrator, all the different kind of font families and kind of look at what's the interesting attribute of it. You know, maybe it's the way the W curls, or maybe there's just like a really interesting embellishment, or it does something like this. And you're going to put it in one of these little boxes and you're going to scale it and move it around. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to create these three different types of figure ground relationships. So in other words, you're not trying to make all of them look stable or all of them ambiguous or all reversible, but I want to see a combination that you're trying to do all three different kinds. So for example, here's a past student one where this one is stable. And as I was saying before, like most of the time when you have the whole letter form and you can see it, and it's not bleeding off into the edges, that does create a stable relationship. Like this one over here, that's pretty stable. I clearly have the letter O and it's sitting on the background. So some of these I may see a little bit differently, and just kind of like your other assignments, I'll just simply tell you like, well, I agree with this, but I see this one differently. Okay, so this one is like reversible, ambiguous. So you can look over these past student ones. This one I don't really agree is stable because I think this is reversible. I see this black as having its own form, and then I see the white, and they go back and forth. You see how the black starts to look like its own shape? I'd actually call that one reversible. But what you're going to do is after you've made all your boxes that are going to be 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, underneath you're going to write the name of the font family, and then you're going to write the figure ground relationship. Okay, so explore font families, explore all different kinds of letters. There's the two different goals with that. And then after you've done one of these, you're going to do a separate one, but after looking at the information in the book about the color principles, and then you're going to go and create another document, and you're going to have one row here that's going to be in black and white, and then you're going to repeat that row, but with the different color principles. So one row should be all complementary color principles, another row should be all analogous color principles, and then the last row, you get to pick one of the color principles. And I included over here a link to the Adobe color wheel. I have that open here. And this is a great place to sort of start you out and just help you come up with some colors. So I want to do my analogous colors. It's going to show me what a group of analogous colors are. And I could take this and I could move it around and I could get this different grouping of analogous colors. So maybe I want to have some that are all in the greens. I want to look at complementary colors, and it shows me how complementary colors are opposites. And so if I want to get a different opposites, I'm going to grab that one circle that's like black. I could grab any of them and move them around, but that one that has the black outline on it keeps it in exactly that same color principle that you chose originally. Okay, so you could use this to help you set up your different color principles. So over here in Illustrator, let's talk about the setup. It's very similar to the same sort of setup you had before. You're going to create your boxes, no fill, stroke. You can copy and paste once you have one. You're going to use your guides to help you line things up. The boxes should all be 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. You can set them up in the properties if you didn't get them exactly like that. So then you're going to take your text tool and you're going to pick a letter per box. So let's see, I don't think I've used N yet. And here's a keyboard shortcut. I'm currently on the text tool, but if I use Control or Command on a Mac, it automatically switches me out of the tool that I'm in, and to the selection tool up here, which can be really useful. So I'm just holding down Control and I can move that around. And now I could also scale it larger, but remember I want to hold the Shift key down as well, so I lock the proportions. And so I could play with that and make it larger. And then the next thing is I want to try some different font types. So with it still selected here, I'm going to go over to my characters. So if you don't see the characters panel open, just go over to Window and look for your characters panel. And here's my character. So I'm going to scroll through, and if I just scroll through and I have my panels over to the side, I can get a preview of how it looks on my document there. So I'm going to go through these, and then maybe I like Blackadder, Briller, Light. So spend a little bit of time going through all of these, and sure, I'll just take Chiller just for the fun of it. And so now that's been applied. And what we want to do is to have the clipping mask. So last week, I talked about how you could do the clipping mask. You're going to go into your layers panel. You need to find, and I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Control to select my path and be able to find which one that is. Okay, I found it over here. I'm going to rename that Rect N. By the way, I have already created a whole bunch of them up here, and then I rearrange things so that they're in order, because your layers can get a little bit crazy. But so I've put things in order to my document over here. So I'll just move over so you can see. So I put, here's my first one, and now my N came out on the top, so I'm going to have to move that. Here's my second one, my third one. If you open those up, you'll see what they are. They are the clipping mask, the layer of the text, and the rectangle. So now here's my N and here's my N rectangle. So I'm going to move those below my last one. So N and my N rectangle, and the N rectangle goes above that. Now I'm going to do it almost the exact same way that I did last week, except I'm going to copy this N rectangle before I create the clipping mask. So I'm just going to use the keyboard shortcut Control C or Command C on a Mac, and then Control to select both of these, and go up to Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and that made it just like it did last week. And I lost my stroke just like I did, we were showing you in the past tutorials. But this time I can go up to Edit, Paste in Place, and because I had copied that rectangle N, it pasted it in place. Now it's up here, it pasted it right up at the top, it pasted in the correct location. So just for sake of organization, I am going to move that down. So it is on the layer right above the clipping mask layer for that N shape. All right, so they're there together. Okay, that's another method. One other method I want to show you is I'm going to, again, select a different box here. And remember, sorry, I'm skipping this step just so I can keep this short, but then I would need to write the name of the font and then what kind of figure ground relationship I think that this has underneath it in the font type as well. So one other method is I have my box selected, and then I'm going to come over here to my different ways that I can draw. So by default, it's on Draw Normal. And the third one is Draw Inside. So this is going to create kind of a mask clipping group automatically. So it's selected like that. I have my text tool selected. I'm going to click inside here, and I'm going to pick a different letter. Let's do Y. And I'm going to select that again, and I'll go through and choose a different font family. And let's just take French script, sure. And Control to select it, Shift to lock the proportion, and I'm going to do something like that. And you see how it stays inside? So that's pretty cool. I didn't have to do all those other steps. Now, one thing to keep in mind though, is if I wanted to now move on to the next tool and I'm still in this draw inside mode, it's only active over here. So what I need to do is switch back to my regular drawing, then I can select this box. And then if I want to use it again, then I go back and I select the draw inside method. All right, so you kind of, because if not, it'll only be drawing inside the last box that I had active. All right, so I'm just going to switch back to my regular, oh, I just added some text by accident. I'm just switching back to my regular draw method. A couple of other things I want to talk about is what if you wanted to switch this so that the box was black and your figure was white. I think you guys probably can figure this out, but I'll just go through the steps. So let's see if I can find my B group, for example. I'll open that up and let me find, all right, I'm going to take this one over here. This is my K. And so I'm going to select my rectangle, go over to my properties, and I'm going to make the rectangle black. Then select my letter. So selecting that here, go back over to properties and make that one white. All right, so that's how you switch it. And it's going to be the exact same thing for making your color ones. So let's say I want to have, I'm going to make this yellow, and then I would go back over to my layers, and I could make my rectangle. So maybe this would be my complementary, and I'm going to make that blue. You also could try making a stroke with a different color. So if I went back over, I chose my K again, choose the K, and I could give it a stroke that's kind of staying within those complementary colors. And I could also increase the weight of my stroke. So if I wanted to see a larger stroke, I could give it a stroke of 2. And you see how the outline's getting bigger, or 3 even. All right. And then the same thing underneath here, though, for the color version, which is on a separate sheet, I'm going to put in what is the color principle. You could just do, if you want, one, just like in the past student example, if I just go back over here. So if you want, you can put it right here on the side. And then it's the same thing. You're going to talk about what's the font type, and what is the figure ground relationship. Okay, so it's a lot of just practicing also what we did in the first week, but as usual, let me know if you have any questions.